Hey there, Alan Matthews here from Classical Guitar Shed, and here we're going to be talking about rolled chords, what they are, how to think of them, how to play them, and more in just a second. Alright, so what is a rolled chord? A rolled chord is, instead of playing a block chord, all the notes exactly at one point in time, it's separated. It could also be a strum. A strum is a really fast rolled chord. It's almost not a rolled chord anymore because it's so fast it sounds like it's one point in time. But you could just do a slow strum and that would also be a rolled chord. So there's the first rule of rolled chords is whenever we're playing classical music, classical guitar music, whatever style it happens to be, the rule is not all chords are rolled, which means just because two notes are happening at the same time doesn't mean that we should roll them. So every time our thumb and finger plays at the same time, more times than not, 99% of the time, play that right in time. Don't flam it. A flam is a drum set rudiment where the sticks hit just off at to where one just is like a little grace note. Bra, bra, bra. We don't want to play like that all the time because it makes our music sound messy and muddy, and it's a common beginner's mistake to do that, thinking that it sounds fancy, but it doesn't sound good. Instead, play everything very cleanly, right in time, and then whenever you want to roll a chord, actually roll a chord and make a statement with it. So how do we actually roll chords? With the right hand here, then more times than not, what we oftentimes will do is the thumb will play the lower notes and then the I-M-A will play the top. So it's all 6 strings, it'll be P, 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 I, M, A, or if it's 5, P, P, I, M, A, or 4, P, I, M, A. However we want to do it, it could be P, 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 I, M, depending on the situation, but generally the hand stays in its basic arpeggio position, right hand position, and free stroke position, and the thumb will play through, might rest stroke through the bass strings, rest, and then free whenever the last one. And ideally, our hand doesn't have to do any kind of this type of thing or pull up or do any kind of thing fancy. It can just stay here and just be right in time. And so that's rule number 1. Not all chords are rolled, and this is how we roll them. Now, when we're rolling chords, we have a couple of decisions to make, such as what needs to be in time. So a rolled chord is an ornament, and an ornament there are some rules to ornaments. One is that it cannot mess with the underlying rhythm of the piece. So just because we have a rolled chord doesn't mean time stops or messes up. Instead, we want to keep things right in time. Another one is that it's structured, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And another is that it speaks to the psychological character of the piece. And that has to do with volume and the speed of the roll and everything else. So and we'll talk about that a little bit more too. But what we have to decide first off is what is in time, right? So here we have an F sharp and a chord, and we can think that because we see this that top note is going to be a melody note, right? So then the question is, does that stay in time, or does the bass note stay in time? Which one is going to stay in time? So if we're clicking along here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, if that's going to be it, then our top note is going to be late because we'll have to roll through here, and then that's going to offset that top note just a little bit, right? 3 and 4 and 1, right? That pushes the melody note a little bit late. And that's valid, especially in Baroque music. That's typically how it is. The bass is going to be more on time. I think that might be because of the way that figured bass, that's kind of geeking out on it, but figured bass was such a structural component of Baroque music, and so the bass needed to be right on time. And so I think that's why it could be the reason that rolled chords in the Baroque music happen on the beat. But in most music, and I'd like this way of doing it much better, in most music that you play, the rolled chord can come before, which means that we can keep this melody in time. So we have 3 and 4 and 1, and that means that these other notes need to happen before that. And so then the way that we do that is that we structure it into the preceding beat. And we make it to where, so in this particular case, there are 3 roll chord notes with one melody note on top. And so that means that this preceding note plus those 3 notes equals 4 notes. 4 notes, which happens to be 1, 2, 3, 4 straight 30-second notes in this case. So we have 4E and O1. I'll just count them as 16ths. 4E and O1, 4E and O1. So what we can do then is we can practice that so that it happens absolutely in time. Now, it's going to be weird when you first do this because we're not used to getting our thumb down there so fast. We're used to putting our thumb on the beat because it's such a bass note thing. But this, we have to get there early. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Ba-ba. So then the way to practice this is going to be to jump on that bass along with the melody note. So you can't wait until the chord, or you can't wait until the beat to think about the chord. You have to get there early. Let's look at some other examples. Here's an example from Malagueña. And so this is 1, 2, and 3, and 1. And so then our melody note, this arpeggio is clearly going up to this melody note up top, right? Ba, 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 bum. This is our melody. We want to keep that and make this go into it and just make a flourish. Da, da, drum. Rise us right up to that melody note. So then we would count these. So our process here is to count these notes, non-melody notes. That's the melody. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll roll that into this chord before, add that to it. And so then we have 6 notes. So that's going to be a 6 tuplet. And there it is right there. And that should be a B, not an E in that particular example. So 1, 2, and triplet, 1. And that hits it right in time. 1, 2, triplet, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. And that will get it in time. So to listen to that, 1, 2, triplet, 1. Triplet, 1. Triplet, 1. Triplet, 1. So we practice that and get that really clean so that when we play it, our melody note continues. We tuck it in there. So the roll has now been tucked into the preceding beat. The melody stays on time, and the roll hasn't messed with the underlying rhythm. Now you might have a retard going on, like in this particular section of Malagueña. It does 1, 1, 2, and 3, and 1. Then you could structure it to where that rolled chord is structured within the retard so that it's really leading it forward and leading us through the retard, and it doesn't conflict with the retard that's going on. So everything is happening in time. Now you could also, if you wanted to, space this out a little bit so that there's a gap, but then you want to actually structure it. So I would always start with any kind of rolled chord. I always start with this as a to where it's rhythmically structured within the note, the preceding note. And then if I want to make this into, say, an 8th note and 32nd note, 6 tuplet, then I can do that. But first, I'm just going to do it straight and then decide after that. Let's look at one more example here. Here we have a few more notes. So exact same thing again, right? We have a melody note, or go rising up, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 notes here. So that means that once we put them in there, there'll be 5 notes, and then so we'll do a 5 tuplet in there. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And so then one of the things that we can look at with this particular example is that to maintain this melody line right here, we don't want to cut this note off, especially at the bar line. We don't want to break it. We want it to be legato. Right? That means that this C needs to hold the whole time over that this is, and then finally connect to the D at the last possible second. So then in this particular example, we might need to have to bar both the C and the G sharp when we play that. So cover 2 strings with our left hand. 4, 5, 1. And not mess with it, not mute the string out with our right hand or with our left hand getting there too early. So this is looking melodically at our rolled chords, putting them in time and structuring them and keeping the melody to have really good integrity. So this has been rolled chords. The main thing is that we handle our rolled chords intentionally, and we don't just roll everything. And whenever we do have a rolled chord, we look at it and decide, how do we use this rolled chord to better express the music? How can we let this rolled chord make the point for us even more? That this is a big moment, for instance, or that this is a particularly poignant emotional moment, or this arrival at this particular harmony means something more than the other ones but around it. So this has been rolled chords. Have fun with those. It's going to be tricky right at first to get to those bottom notes, but if you do this, it makes your music more beautiful. All right, have fun with that, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Bye.